Now to something else that had the country laughing today. You know, there's few things that are more satisfying than seeing a bully starting a fight but getting his proverbial handed to him on a platter. Such was the case with former PM Kevin Rudd, a man consumed by petty vindictiveness. Seeing an image of PM Scott Morrison meeting last week with Sky News' Piers Morgan, our new host here, Piers Morgan, Rudd was very angry. He tweeted, "What on earth is Scott Morrison doing with Murdoch's Piers Morgan? This bloke remains at the centre of an ongoing UK trial over his staff hacking into innocent people's devices to invade their privacy. So much for Morrison, the digital privacy crusader." Now, Piers Morgan quickly called out this disinformation. He tweeted, "This is all a total lie. I am not and never have been at the centre of any trial, and none of my staff was ever prosecuted for hacking. How did someone as clueless as you ever get to be Prime Minister?" That is a good question, Piers. I've wondered that myself. Now, what followed is a textbook case of projection. Rudd doubled down, tweeting, "Memo to Piers Morgan. We know you're a bully and a thug who's been dispatched to our country by another bully and thug, Murdoch. So a little advice. Australians don't like bullies. We don't like thugs. So I suspect Australians won't like you." Now, on the detailed 3 simple questions. Okay. Good Lord, you can believe he was once a statesman. I mean, he tweets like he's a petulant child. But Rudd is correct in one sense, and that is Australians despise bullies, especially this one.
Prime Minister Kevin Rudd is a foul-mouthed leader with a vicious temper.
The Prime Minister has had another expletive-laden brain explosion.
And there's a story having said back in Australia about you dropping the F-bomb.
He'd reduced a young female attendant to tears on one flight.
The Prime Minister complained sharply about the food provided.
An event last year at the Stag Hotel in Adelaide where Kevin called Julia Gillard a childless, atheist, ex-communist. He was on a rampage, calling her everything.
Interestingly, Kevin Rudd has promised a kinder, gentler brand of politics after executing one of the most brutal and drawn-out revenge attacks this place has ever seen.
And tell these dickheads in the embassy to just give me simple sentences. I mean, I've said this before. And tell that bloody interpreter. There's language.
One backbencher took to Twitter to warn against returning to a psychopath with a giant ego.
And what follows is pure hypocrisy and duplicity. Here is Rudd last year at the Senate inquiry into media diversity in Australia.
I believe the way in which the Murdoch media publicly depicted my successor, Julia Gillard, was particularly venomous. But when I look at Prime Minister Gillard's period in office, there was an additional dimension to it, which bordered on misogyny.
A particularly venomous depiction of Gillard? You mean like this, Kev?
It started in the 2010 election campaign. Julia Gillard went into that campaign with a lead of 55-45 in the two-party preferred vote. And then there were leaks. Some accused Kevin Rudd directly of that. Those leaks undermined her efforts.
The questions fueled by the leaking of the sealed section of the report into Labor's abysmal election campaign. The authors blame the leaks against Julia Gillard for the result and imply Mr. Rudd was behind them.
Well, I've always thought it was Kevin Rudd.
And on the subject of misogyny, what did former PM Julia Gillard have to say about who perpetuated it?
Julia Gillard accuses Kevin Rudd of physically bullying her when they were in opposition in 2007.
After the tactics meeting broke up, he very physically stepped into my space and it was quite a bullying encounter. It was a menacing, angry performance.
Kevin Rudd's bitterness is clear.
That is utterly false.
Utterly false. This denial from a former PM who verbally abused and castigated a 23-year-old Royal Australian Air Force flight attendant, reducing her to tears because she didn't have his preferred meal. You decide. The last word should be left to Piers Morgan, who aptly summarised Rudd's record in office. He said, "Hi, Kevin. I won't take bullying thug lectures from a bloke branded a bullying thug by his colleagues. Nor will I take popularity advice from someone kicked out of office by the Australian people after less than 3 months in your last humiliating tenure as PM. Have a good day."